experience, you have colorful index cards. I'll hold it away from my face. You have colorful index cards in your pew. Yes, the girls up here got pink. You might have gotten some other color. The color of your card doesn't matter. Those are for any questions you might have while we're doing the presentation. So if you know you are a person who always has many questions, you should grab more than one. Once all three of us have finished presenting, we're going to collect all the questions, and I'm going to try really quick to sort through them, and we'll answer as many as we can here before our time is up, and then we'll make sure the answers to them all are printed in the next newsletter. But just make sure you grab them. We tried to distribute them, but feel free to grab them from empty pews that are near you if you know that you're going to have questions. All right, tech team, are we streaming? We are live. We are live. Hello, people on the internet. If you have questions, my online people, just send me an email or email Kelly or email Ted. Again, we will try to get all the answers collected for our next newsletter. All right, folks. Well, thank you for coming to today's town hall. It is so good to have you all here and everybody online and watching in the future. We're happy to have you here to hear more about the plan for the campus renovation. When we're going through things today, we have a number of things we want to share with you. We're going to be starting by talking first about the why of this all. What's our mission and our vision as a church, and why is this plan putting our forward with faith into action? Why is now the time? And then Kelly's going to share with you the plans, like what the plans actually are, the timeline for those plans, and then Ted will share with you some benefits of the project as well as fundraising results to date and an invitation to support this initiative, and then we'll do some Q&A. And as I said, we will try to get to as many of your Q's with our A's as we can today. So let's start first by talking about our church's mission and our vision. And the tiny print paragraph on here is just a really nice summary of what I'm about to say. So don't feel like you need to squint to read it. That's okay. But Pat and Glenn got on there because I thought to myself, this paragraph says, at Hunt's Church, we are a welcoming, Christ-centered community. And I just thought of the two of them when I thought welcoming to Hunt's Church, standing out there greeting us every single Sunday. At Hunt's Church, we believe in being a welcoming, Christ-centered community where we provide opportunities for faith and for service and for fellowship. Our mission here at Hunt's Church, as I said earlier in my sermon today, is to embody the person of Jesus Christ and to be Christ's presence here in the world. And our core values, which I'll talk more about in a moment, for several years now we've identified that our core values as a church are to be faithful, welcoming, nurturing, compassionate, and forward-looking. Those are our 5 core values as a church. And so all the things that you're going to hear today are coming out of those values. It really starts with who we are and what we are about first and foremost. Now, of course, last year we celebrated 250 years of faithful people here on the Hill, and we know that throughout the history of Hunt's Church and of Carol's Gill's church that we have had one unified mission across all the changes and all the different locations and buildings and sanctuaries and fellowship areas. The mission has always been to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Amen? And so as our campus has changed, as the buildings have changed, you see there a snowy Carol's Gills and a pastor breaking ground here at Hunt's and all sorts of different classes gathered throughout the generations. Throughout every generation, our mission is unified, even as our surroundings change. Our mission is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. So, when we talk about this campus renovation, it is not just about renovating our campus. It's about putting that mission into action. Last year, with our 250th anniversary, we had that theme phrase of forward with faith. Through our 250th anniversary celebration, we were moving forward with faith. And this renovation really puts forward with faith into action. Those core values that I mentioned earlier, I think are really embodied in the plans that you're going to hear today. You know, we see ourselves as a church that is faithful. We believe God is faithful to us. God is still doing something with us here in this place. And so when I was visiting with Nell Kirby and talking with her about this plan just a week or so ago, she said, well, if God's faithful to us, we got to be faithful right back. And I think she's right. We need to be faithful in return for all that God has done for us. And so our faithfulness means living out of a belief that God is still working and moving forward with the belief that God is still working and God has plans for us here. We believe and we see ourselves as a welcoming and nurturing and compassionate community. And so because of that, a number of the plans that we are including in this plan that you'll hear today are going to enable us to be more welcoming and more nurturing and more compassionate, right? We're talking about building spaces where we can care better for our youngest, and we're talking about building options so that folks can have full accessibility, whether you are walking or in a wheelchair or somewhere in between. You know, we want to be able to nurture and welcome all different people, all different abilities, and all different backgrounds into our spaces and have them feel welcome here at Hunt's Church. We want to be able to set our facilities up so that the nurturing ministries of Hunt's Church, whatever they might look like in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, have space to thrive and have space for us to try things. And so a number of the things, I'm really proud that the plan that we've put together here is not just, let's build a world-class theater because we're going to start a theater here at Hunt's Church. They're not so specific that if we need to pivot, that we can't pivot, right? They are very flexible plans that allow us to try a lot of different ministry options as God calls us forward into the future. And of course, that value of being forward-looking, like we wouldn't even have this plan if it weren't for us being forward-looking people. In 1992, our congregation purchased the Agape House, and Roger Wittenbach was one of the key people in helping to organize us to raise the funds to purchase Agape House so that we could use that house for offices. But for the last 32 years, we have not had any major campus capital campaigns or campus renovations. But because of the forward-looking leadership of Roger and Marty and a few other folks, they have really kept our eye on the ball of saying we need to look forward, and we need to look forward with faith. We need to not just let things be nice as they are. We need to really look forward into how we're preparing our church today for the future. So all this has led to us saying, now is the time. Now is the time for us to undergo this total campus renovation. And we think now is the time for a few different reasons. One is that we see a renewed vitality here in our congregation. I was visiting with my parents yesterday, and they told me, it's so sad we only have one child go up during the children's message. And I think about how even in my last 3 years here, the herd that tramps down the aisle here on a Sunday morning has gotten bigger and bigger. You know, we have this renewed vitality, more children, more young families, more people of all ages connecting with God in a meaningful way here at Hunt's. And we're growing bit by bit by bit, family by family. We are growing as a church. We have this renewed vitality. We have a real alignment among our leadership as well, which we could have all the vitality we want, but without aligned leadership, this project wouldn't get off the ground. But we have a real alignment between the folks with a vision and the church council and the finance committee, and all of that was affirmed by the Carol Skills Permanent Endowment Fund Committee really coming to support and to be unified in this vision. So we have alignment of all these different key leadership groups and key constituencies within our church who are all really excited about this project. And you'll hear more about some of the folks who have already stepped forward to support this in a little while. We also think now is the time because we are making more community connections than ever. And our church council is taking extra time every month this year to really focus on our community connections and learning about our community. You know, we have made a new in-depth connection with our local community association, hosting them here at our church. We're reinvesting in our scout ministry. We're reinvesting in our AA ministry. We have a number of community connections that we are reinvesting into, and we are also seeing even more connections with our preschool and church than ever before. We are having more folks who start as preschool families become church families than we've ever seen before, which is so cool. Praise God. It is such an amazing thing to see Jesus working in the lives of these folks. And so all this allows us to say, you know what? This is long overdue. Let's do it. It's time for the refresh. It's time to move things forward. It's time to make this renovation happen. So the renovation is in 3 phases, and I'm going to have Kelly come up to tell you about it. Church building, Agape House, outdoors. Why don't you take us through it? And this has this little button. That's a laser pointer. So if you need to point at the map at all, feel free.
Hello. So I am super excited to be back up here after, I think, a year and a half when Ted and Carissa and Marty Isola and Roger and I were up here to sort of introduce this the first time and to feel people out and to see if we could make this happen. And here we are, and I'm so thankful to everybody for supporting it and being excited, and people that were maybe nervous about it have jumped on board, and now I feel like we have an enthusiasm that we can make this happen, and we are making it happen. So as most of you have seen, if you haven't, you should stop down on the lower level. We did a renovation of the interior bathrooms here at the church building over the summer. We added 2 children's bathrooms. Oh, I forgot you said I have a little, what do I? Oh, gotcha. Okay, so they are right here. If you aren't familiar with this, this is the main hallway that takes you to the Van Meter Hall. If you turn this way to go towards the church, this was a janitor's closet that is now 2 very nicely sized children's bathrooms. The other bathrooms didn't change their location, but we changed them from 2 outdated bathrooms to 4 bathrooms. One is ADA compliant, the other is very large, if you need some more room to dance when you're in the bathroom if you want. And the other 2 are very functional, although a little smaller, but there's 4 new adult bathrooms. So that's 6 improved bathrooms that we made happen this summer, along with the columbarium project that happened over the summer. So it's very exciting, great takeoff to our project. So the next phase that's going to plan to happen starting in January is a new fellowship hall. This will be in addition to the current Van Meter Hall. It is going to be in this area. So if you're familiar right now, you walk in the front door and you go down a very narrow hallway, and there's a room that some know what it is to the right and some have never been in it, and there's a room to the left that most people, majority, probably don't know what it is, but it's our resource room, which is stuffed to the gills with everything we need to make the church function, and it's kind of hard to maneuver around in there right now for storage purposes. Anyways, you walk through here, and you used to actually stare right into the men's room at the end of the hallway, which was not totally welcoming. But anyways, you don't do that anymore. But all of those walls are going to go away, and we're going to create a very warm, inviting fellowship hall. It will have replaced coat closets. It will have a small coffee bar, not a full kitchenette, but a coffee bar area. It'll have some meeting space, some lounge space. It'll have the ability to close on both ends for funerals, weddings, that sort of thing, meetings if you want something private. But it'll also be a very easily accessed area to just go right down from church and gather in there after worship if we aren't using the Van Meter Hall. All of that, plus this is the current choir room, and this was the adult ed room. These 2 rooms, everything from this wall over will be happening from January till right before Easter. We would like it to wrap up before Easter. These 2 rooms are going to turn into classrooms that are leaving this area over here. So we aren't gaining any classrooms, we're just changing their location of them so that we can use Van Meter Hall to its fullest, so we can have events. We won't have to take down the accordion walls. They will go away. We'll have all the windows. It'll just be a really, really nice, lovely Van Meter Hall, another fellowship hall for our functions. And it won't be preschool classrooms. They will be located over here. So all of that is happening January to Easter. I guess we don't. So then as soon as preschool lets out, which is the very end of May, we will start work from that wall over. So that will entail breaking down everything in this area. So the stage will be going away. There are currently 2 offices right here, and then the classrooms that are along here. All of this is going to go away. Right here is the current kitchenette. Right here is table storage currently. These two offices that are leaving from the school here are going to move to these two locations right here, which is convenient. They'll have kind of glass openings. They'll be able to see the kids in the class, in the hallway. Parents will be able to walk up and see, be able to easily get to the offices, get to all the administration of the school. Plus, they're close to the children's bathrooms. It's all kind of in a generalized area now. So these two classrooms stay the same. The school offices will be here. These are the children's bathrooms that are, obviously used from church and school, but during the week, mostly it's the little ones from preschool, and then these two will be classrooms. So you go over here, when you're coming into Van Meter Hall, all of this area is going to be a new kitchenette that'll actually have an open bar kind of concept, so you can walk over in a sort of a U shape, sort of more welcoming. You could actually hang out there and have a beverage, not just walk up to a little window and get your beverage to go. So it'll be more of a gathering type thing, but it'll also be just as functional in the same purposes that our current kitchenette is used for. Like I said, all of this will be open now, and you might be wondering, are we losing space adding all of this? But we don't. We are just, the square footage that we have to use Van Meter Hall is staying the same. It's just changing in the direction of the square footage that's usable. So we're not actually, when Van Meter Hall is all opened up, we'll have the exact same amount of room for the most part that we did before. Right here will be the new choir room. We are working with Chase for what they need for acoustics and that sort of thing, to have a setup that's really more usable than the current choir room is for their practices, and he is working with a designer to bring in the proper acoustics and setup for the choir room, which will be a new and improved choir room for those that affects, which will be really awesome. Back here is sort of an open storage space, and here is a designated storage room, but all of this essentially will be mainly storage. The tables, things that are leaving the kitchen corridor, all of that is going to be back here in a new storage area. And this whole side will be completed before school opens up. So it'll all take place next summer. And that is the phase one, part of the phase one and all of the interior of the church. So as I went over, so now we're going to stage, where are we? Oh, well, before that starts, right now, some of you in this room are involved in this, but we have many little groups behind the scenes making sure everything that needs to happen in this building now in preparation for the start in January is happening. So there are people organizing and packing things up for the resource room. There are people organizing everything that's currently in all of our historical items and everything that are in the bicentennial room, and there is a group that's working in the choir room. And so all of those things that need to be packed up and moved and cleaned out and organized is all happening this fall. So I thank all the volunteers that are helping to do that behind the scenes. So we just talked about that, and then we just did stage 2. So now we just did stage 4. Okay. So after all that, the church is going to be in 2025. Our plan for 2026 is to move over to the Agape House. I won't go through pointing to everything. It gets a little confusing, especially if you've never spent a lot of time in the Agape House. It wouldn't mean a whole lot to you when I'm pointing around. But what it will have is, right now we have a basement to a 3rd floor, and unless you can easily walk all those floors by the stairs, you're not really moving around a whole lot. So there will be an elevator that's going to be installed, so you can get from the basement to the 3rd floor. We're going to have enhanced living room type comfortable space for people the men's group to meet, anybody to meet. We'll have new meeting spaces. As I mentioned, in the church building, a lot of meetings would happen in the adult ed room. The adult ed room and all the meetings that would take place in this building will now be taking place at the Agape House in new meeting spaces that we'll be creating. The office spaces for Carissa and the choir director and the treasurer and all of those things are going to have newly designated and nice updated workspaces for them. The basement is going to partially be turned into new storage facilities. They will be very nice, very organized, and very like sectioned off for things that the preschool needs, things that Vacation Bible School needs, our Christmas decorations that, if anybody knows, are shoved in this little corner over here, and it's not optimal. So everybody will have a nice new space to get everything they need. They'll just have to go to Agape House to do it. Anything that has to be used on a weekly basis, we have a plan to have them in this building. So we're not saying every Sunday you have to go to Agape House, go down the basement, get something out, and bring it to this building. If those sort of things will stay in this building. But if it's something like Vacation Bible School, where once a year you have to get it out, it will be in a new storage facility that'll be in the basement of Agape House. Along with all of this is technology updates that we've been working on the last couple of years. Those will continue to be enhanced between the two buildings. There'll be a new youth center that can be accessed by all of our youth programs at Hunts, also the ones that we sponsor, like the Scouts and the Girl Scouts and any other type of youth program can use these centers. They can also be used for other functions we have for anybody, but those will be very nice. There is an outside patio right now that is somewhat used, but structurally it needs some reinforcements. So that will be also happening, and some of other exterior repairs that have sort of been neglected over the last several years are also going to take place. There'll also be, it'll be handicap accessible. There'll be a wheelchair ramp that's very nicely done. Marty is working on that actually. And if anybody doesn't know, we are extremely blessed to have Marty Azzola kind of in the background helping with so much of this. If you don't know anything about him or his company over the years, you should really Google it, get his book, read it. We are beyond blessed to have his vision and his ideas and his help behind all of this. So check him out. It's pretty impressive. So he's working on a new entrance. We'll have a new entrance where everybody can easily access the Agape House once it is starting to get used more. And so that's the Agape House. The exterior enhancement, it's still a work in progress, so I don't, pay too much attention to this. It will be somewhat like that, if you even can tell what you're looking at there. But basically, we're going to reconfigure the entrances of Joppa, particularly Joppa. If anybody knows, it's very dangerous to leave and enter off of Joppa. That will be changing. It will be moved up further west on Joppa, so you will be able to be very designated and safe entrance and exit from Joppa. There'll also be a new enhanced entrance and exit on Old Court. There'll be a flow with hardscape in the middle of the parking lots, so there's actually a flow to our parking lot, so it's safe for pedestrians. Easy. Right now it's just a big giant box and people come flying in it, and there's no real rhyme or reason to it, and I'm sure everybody's experienced that. There'll also be sort of a parking areas for preschool in the morning to drop their kids off, so they're not having to park, so far away and go through, especially in bad weather or whatever. They'll have spaces that are closer. There'll be new walkways added, and some of it isn't all happening in phase. Some of them you will see little projects going on throughout the next couple of years. The majority of this will happen in 2027, and this will be the last. We're hoping to wrap all this up by the end of 2027. There will be a new hardscape patio in the front entrance of the church, which is not on this picture, but out front of the main doors where we like to gather right now, which is mostly grass. And if anybody wonders what that big dry entry way for gathering. It'll also have more signage and walkways that specifically take you to the preschool, so you know where you're going when you get here, because right now a lot of people come up and they don't know which way to go in church, which way to go for the preschool, what door is what. All of that will be enhanced with walkways, hardscape, that sort of thing, awnings on the outside in areas that are appropriate and aesthetically they should be. We're not going to slap a big thing on the front of the church. The Scout Shack is either going to be moved or removed, but it won't stay in its current location. Right now, what's such a shame is this such a great church, but you're whizzing up the hill where it cuts off from Old Court and Joppa, and you kind of see it a little, but mostly just see the playground. You definitely don't notice it if you're on the Joppa Road side, and if you're on your Old Court, if you're paying attention to where you're driving, you don't notice it, or you're turning your head. If you're coming east on Old Court, you're almost passing it before you can notice our church because things are blocking your vision of it. So our hope and our vision for it is that from particularly the Old Court Way, from either direction, that you're really going to notice this beautiful church and not kind of miss it as you're driving by. And we are part of the vision of the youth centers. There's going to be kind of two areas, but one of them is the garage at Agape House. Will be turned into recreation type area. So storage from the garage is we're gonna build storage and space for what's currently in the garage. That will be in Agape House and a very kind of off path, so it's not sitting right in the lawn where that's all you see is a shed or whatnot. So that's the outdoor enhancement, right?
And I want to just ask, could you give Kelly some appreciation? She has done a lot of the design work and planning around this and really been kind of the keystone person connecting all the different parts. All right, Ted, you're going to talk us through?
I'm going to talk through the benefits here.
Do you want to click through?
Sure. I should be able to handle this. Look at that. All right. So why are we doing this? First thing is increased navigation. For any of you that are relatively new to the church, finding the church can be a little bit of a challenge. At least it was for my family when we came in 2013. And then once you get in the parking lot, figure out the front door. Okay, isn't that weird? We have a church. Most churches, it's obvious where the front door is. We like to give you options and make you guess where the front door is. Some of that signage and work we're going to do on the outside hopefully makes it obvious where our front door is. So again, if you think about wanting to be welcoming, you never want to give somebody a reason to pause, right? Because a reason to pause is discomfort. And so we start with saying we need to increase navigation. Then when you get inside, figuring out where to go, again, if you were relatively new, good luck, right? I mean, you knew where the men's room was because you stared at it when you walked in the door, but that's about the only thing you knew. So a lot of this is to just make our church more welcoming to folks who may not be familiar with it. And if you think about increasing our interaction with the community and inviting the community to use our spaces, you really need to make it easy for them because they may not be frequent visitors. Enhanced fellowship. This is one of the aspects of it that's most exciting to me is I remember when we first started coming here, we'd gather in Van Meter Hall, which was always a challenge because you had to fight through the crowd waiting to get their coffee or donuts or juice. We got out of that habit with COVID. We don't have a habit right now of kind of gathering. We kind of do it in weird places. Sometimes we stand in the grass, which is tough when it's rained. We're going to create spaces that we can easily fellowship and get back into that habit of spending time either before or after service together. So I think that'll be pretty exciting. Increasing the appeal. Kelly talked about kind of how we kind of are an awesome church that has this fantastic history, great building, and then we hide it, right? Hide it. Some of it's, we're not going to be able to change it. The roads are what the roads are, but let's make the appeal of this campus. And like Agape House, how many people that aren't associated with this church know Agape House is part of our campus? Nobody, right? They figure it's the pastor lives there, which she works a lot, but she don't live there. So, increasing the appeal of our campus, we think will be helpful. Multi-purpose usage and future flexibility, I think are important because we don't know what the future holds for our church, right? I mean, think about all the changes our church has gone through in the past, And we've been blessed by those folks making those decisions that have enabled us to kind of grow and thrive. Well, we need to kind of have that kind of mentality too of saying, we don't know what the future holds. So whatever we do, let's make sure, you know, as best as we can, it'll meet the needs of what's to come. So that flexibility, I think, is going to be important. So those are some of the benefits. Comes with a price tag, though. Nothing is free, right? So this price tag, we think if you go back to before the columbarium was built to the completion of this project in 2027, we believe we'll spend $1.85 million. It's a big number. How's that going to be spent? The columbarium cost $150,000. That's pretty much done, and that's what it costs. That was our budget, and that's what has been spent. A little bit of work is remaining, but it's pretty much done. The church building that Kelly walked through, the first floor, if you will, the main level, that'll be just under $600,000, we believe. That number's pretty solid because that comes from contractor bids, and you know, like the schematic we showed there was from some of the work in that process. So that number's pretty solid. Obviously, with construction, things can always go up and down a little bit. Agape House, and Agape House, when we talk about that, includes some outside work around Agape. That we think will cost about $650,000. The big cost, a big cost with Agape House is the elevator. Elevators are about a quarter of that cost. It's a big deal. You don't shortcut an elevator. I don't want to be on one. That's somebody's shortcut. And that goes from the basement to the third floor. And just think about what that will enable us to do with that building, which today, if you ever happen to be there and are asked to move something from the second floor to the first floor, good luck. I've scraped up some walls trying to move some stuff. Wouldn't it have been nice to have a dolly roll onto the elevator, go down and roll it off? For folks who meet there, wouldn't it be nice to have an elevator that can take you up to those meeting spaces? So that's a big cost of the Agape House, but I think a worthwhile cost because it opens up that whole building. And then the outdoor site is probably, we think just under $500,000 to do all the work there. That's a little bit less defined than the others, I think, which is fine because it comes last. And we'll also have the others done, and we'll be able to kind of prioritize and figure out if our ideas make sense as we've kind of changed the property. So $1.85 million. How are we going to pay for it, right? We could sit here and pray and hope the dollars just show up in the middle. That might work. It would work for the people that were hungry, right? But we don't need to count on that. We've already raised some funds. I'll go into some details on the next slide. We've already raised some funds, so we're not starting from zero. The preschool, Kelly Unger and the preschool committee have been really creative in going after some state grants for aging schools. And so some of the funding that they've been able to generate is going to be used for some of the work that benefits the preschool. We have some memorial and scout funds that we can use for this project. The general endowment fund is gifts that people have given in the past to this church, or some of the surpluses the preschool has generated in the last few years have gone to increase the general endowment fund, and then the way we've invested it, it has grown. It's at a point where we can use some of that money to fund this project. Carol's Gill Endowment, I'll tell you about a fantastic gift that they're making for this project in a moment. And then we all get to play a part. And I'll come back to that in a moment. So let's look at where we are to date. So far, we've raised a little over $1.5 million. So we had $1,850,000 cost of this project is what we're estimating. And so far, we have raised a little over $1.5 million. How does that break down? Need my glasses and numbers for this one. So the columbarium project, I mentioned it cost $150,000 to date through gifts as well as selling of niches in the columbarium. we've brought in $127,000. So that's already been given, and that project will not only fund itself as more people buy niches over time, but it'll also fund the ongoing maintenance of the columbarium. I'm going to skip the lead donors for a moment. The General Endowment Fund, as I mentioned, that is a little over $500,000 right now, and I think of that as kind of a key reserve for our church to help us either through major activities or situations that can emerge, or to help us kind of weather a tough time. It's a little over $500,000, but the church council has approved taking $150,000 of that endowment fund and using it for this project. The preschool grants, what's in here right now is just what's been captured so far is $6,000. There may be some future grants that will be able to contribute to this project. So it's a small slice today, but one that has the potential to grow. Some memorial funds, again, a small slice, that'll be about $6,000. Some of the people have given in memory of others. The memorial committee feels some of those funds are appropriate to use for different aspects of this project. And then as we try to create more youth-focused spaces, we may be able to tap into the Thompson Scout Fund. That was a gift to the church in the past that we think can be appropriately used for this project. I do want to highlight the Carol's Guild. That's the biggest, I don't know, is that maroonish kind of thing or reddish kind of color there? At their last meeting, they unanimously approved a gift of $800,000 for this project, which is incredible and awesome, and really shows. I mean, think about the history we're talking about here. Gill's Church, Carol's Gill's, and now Hunt's Church. It's kind of like it's nice to see the continuity of that faithfulness of those congregations is going to benefit congregations here in the future. So I just want to take a moment and thank the Carol's Guild Permanent Endowment Fund Committee for making that size of a gift. It's tremendous. We wouldn't be kind of as confident in funding this plan without that gift. So, it's just fabulous that they see the vision and want to be part of it and of making a contribution in a significant way. One of the process steps we have with that is to do that, they need to change the church needs to change the agreement that governs that fund, which is what Reverend Chris had talked about will happen on the 16th of this month with the first part of our church council meeting. So it's a procedural step, but one that they, again, have already approved, and we just need the church conference to approve, which we'll take care of on the 16th. Now we turn to the congregation's giving. As part of this effort, Reverend Chris and I met with probably 6-7 folks, families in the church, to kind of share the plans like we're doing today. And what struck me was two things. One was the enthusiasm people had. We're sitting in people's homes, which are very generous to invite us in, especially because they knew we were going to ask for money. Usually if someone comes to my door and wants money, I don't invite them into my house and give them something to drink or something to eat, but y'all did. But what struck me was the enthusiasm people had when they heard about this project. It was almost a sense of like, yes, we're doing something meaningful here. The second is people have stepped up in a big way, and it was just really interesting. I don't know people's finances, and it wouldn't be appropriate, but I just got the sense when I walked out, they were going to find a way to do as much as they could. And through those meetings so far, people have already committed $450,000. And by the end of this month, by the end of September, over half of that has been received already. So even though we asked for commitments that would go from the day we're meeting with them through the end of 27, people have given, the commitments were $450,000, and we have about half of that already received, which is fabulous. So if you do the math real quick, It's hard to do those numbers real fast in your head, so I did a slide that says, what remains? Little over $300,000. So if you look at this graphic, which is our fancy graphics department created for us, that's 100 hands. 100 hands to make this project happen. 84 of those hands have already stepped up and kind of have made a commitment, if you will, which leaves 16% or 16 hands still to go. So this is our opportunity to kind of get us the final step. What we're asking each person here, online, if we see you walking down the street, we might ask you there too, but is to consider what you can do in terms of a financial commitment for this project for the next 3 years, okay? And I'm gonna give you a self-addressed stamped envelope, as they say on television, on your way out with the pledge form inside. And the pledge form is asking you, to pray on this. Ask yourself, what can you do to help fund this project and giving over the next 3 years? So I know a lot of people, it's like you think about the short term, you kind of have your plans in place, but allow yourself to think about 2025, 2026, 2027. What can you commit above and beyond what you already give the church? Please don't stop. Please don't give to the church and its operating fund just to do this, because that doesn't really solve our problem. This is over and above. What can you pledge to do? And then I would ask that you kind of fill out the sheet. It's kind of pretty self-explanatory, not that hard. And then return it to the church office so that we can track the commitments people have made. And again, I realize if you make a commitment, sometimes life happens and you can't honor it. So it's not like we're going to come to your door and kind of badger you. But it is helpful for us to be able to kind of plan the timing of some of these projects. There's some projects that we'd like to pull up into earlier years, and if we know the funding's going to be there, we can do that. So it's really helpful. And I look at it as this church has been really blessed by people in the past making commitments. Like, there's no way we're sitting here 251 years later if people before us didn't make commitments at different times. We haven't had a major capital campaign in this church, for a long time, right? Agape House was bought 32 years ago, and I don't think we've done a kind of a major appeal since then. This is our time. Let's, I ask that you all pray on this, make what commitments you can, fill out the form, send it in so that we can plan. Okay? So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Reverend Krista for some Q&A. If you filled out your comment cards or whatever we call them, that'd be great.
Yeah. I'm going to ask Ted and Kelly to be our ushers to collect. Go ahead and take a moment, write down any questions you have. We're not collecting money right now. We're collecting question cards. So if you have any questions you would like us to answer, go ahead and give them over, and we'll sort through them. I'm trying to collect it because then if 5 people have different versions of the same question, I can consolidate your questions. So that's why we're doing it this way, and so that we can keep track of them. But we'll chat. Well, I'm happy to hear you chat later. All right. The one thing I want to say is that I want to really ask you, I want to just again echo what Ted was saying, to ask everybody to consider how you might be able to support this project over the course of 3 years. I know folks have a variety of different funding options in your life. I know for Matthew and I, we are parents with a young kid, but we're going to look at what we can afford to put in our budget over 3 years and make that commitment that is big for us. And so whatever you would be able to do, I hope that you will make a commitment that is significant for you, whatever that looks like, so that you can be part of helping to build the church of tomorrow today. And so that is what our ask is for today. And do we have those forms that we're handing out? Okay, cool. When you leave, we'll make sure that you get those so that you can think about those and pray on those. Okay. Boop-a-dee-boop-a-dee-boop. Okay, Kelly, so this is part of why I wanted to collect questions. We have a couple different people who are asking about getting rid of the bicentennial parlor and not having a history space. Can you speak a little bit? I know we have plans to incorporate honoring our history in the new fellowship area. And can you talk about, like, we're not taking away history space, we're adding and recreating. So can you talk a little bit about that?
So there are going to be spaces within the new fellowship hall that will, there'll be displays and things that will have items of our historical past from both Hunts and Carroll's Gills that will be displayed. Some of them will be rotating, some might be permanent. So there will be spaces for that. There'll also be spaces in the other new areas of church for those. There will also be spaces created in the Agape House for those sort of items. Right now, the committee that we have that is going through the Bicentennial Room are kind of going through their suggested items that would be really great to display in this sort of way, and what they would suggest be kind of rotated maybe on a 6-month basis, maybe every year, maybe every 3 months. We haven't gotten to that point, but there will be, particularly when you walk in the new fellowship hall, areas of display of historic items that are right now in the Bicentennial Room, but the same thing will happen at Agape House also.
Yeah, and one of these cards says, I'm part of that team packing stuff up. We have ideas to share. And you're ready. They're ready. The other question I got was, why do we need 2 fellowship halls? And so I just want to go back to that slide and talk a little bit about the 2 separate fellowship areas that we'll be creating out of this. So as Kelly shared with you, we'll have this smaller fellowship hall. When you really enter the church, you'll come right into this nice, naturally lit, sun-filled, open room right as you come into the church, right below this space that we're standing in right now. But we're, of course, not getting rid of Van Meter Hall. So why is it that we need 2 fellowship halls? I think two answers to that question come to mind. The first is, for Sunday morning purposes, we have experienced in our church that people don't naturally flow to Van Meter Hall. If you have ever tried to hand out refreshments in the kitchenette, you're not going to get everybody, because folks go down these stairs and scoot right out the door. And that's why I stand at the top of these stairs to shake your hand, so you can't miss me if you're going out here. But the concept is, by having a new fellowship area right below the sanctuary, it's going to really draw people in, right? You can imagine going down those stairs, you smell coffee, you see donuts, your kid won't let you leave without getting a donut because they can see it, right? You're drawn into the fellowship, and it's a really natural flow at the bottom of the stairs. So folks are naturally coming into a fellowship space that we're not doing right now, right? Even though Van Meter Hall exists, we're not really using it that way. And that's been true for several years now in this post-COVID era. Since I've been here, I've experienced a fellowship time after church in Van Meter Hall one time, and it was because we had a funeral right after that. And so, that's 3+ years, right? So it's time for us to create a new rhythm and a new usage of our fellowship spaces. The other thing I picture us doing on a Sunday morning with the new fellowship space is, I think about all the times that we say in announcements, to sign up for this, go talk to so-and-so. For this study, get a book at thus and such. Instead of having everything on that windowsill, if we were going to a fellowship hall, we could say, well, Kathy Davis will be in fellowship hall with a sign-up sheet and a sampling of the cookies for the cookie bazaar. There's a table in the fellowship hall with the books for the study. There's a person down there to talk to you about this mission project. We could have this space for us to gather after worship, to then gather and fellowship together and engage in the ministries that we're talking about in church in there. So I'm just hoping that becomes more of a place that we really actually gather instead of theoretically gathering on a Sunday morning. The other thing I will say is that our church building gets used not just on Sunday mornings. Our church building gets used a lot Monday through Friday. If you've ever pulled up here on a Monday through Friday, this building is packed. Every space gets used. And so Monday through Friday, we still have is Nora still here? Is Nora with us? Hey, Nora, do you ride bikes around the big room? Yeah. Do you eat lunch in the big room? Yeah. So the kids still use Van Meter Hall every day of the week. And so Van Meter Hall will continue to be a big space for the children that they use in preschool. indoor recess, all sorts of indoor activities that need a lot of space for kids to move around, or it's used as a multi-purpose lunchroom. And during the week, we also have other ministries going on concurrent with preschool. One of the problems that we are facing with our current facility setup is that we are trying to teach children in a safe environment and provide the key ministry of Alcoholics Anonymous to folks from the community in one building at the same time. And that is really hard because you have children who need to be in an environment where they are with only known adults who are safe people, and then you have folks who need to be able to come in and be anonymous and come in and require the life-saving recovering ministry that AA provides. And so one of the things that I really love about this plan is that you could have AA meet in this smaller fellowship hall and completely lock all the connection points between this part of the building and the rest of the building so that AA could use the small fellowship hall and have restroom access, and it could be completely separated off from the whole rest of the facility where the children are learning in a safe and secure environment. Does that make sense? So like it enables us to have some more options Monday through Friday for all the other ministry we do beyond a Sunday morning. And I am also confident that on Sunday morning, we will figure out something to do with all that space because I know, oh, thank you. And I know, because I know that we also have, a growing Sunday school program that's about to outgrow the room formerly known as the adult ed room, now known as the clubhouse. And so we have a lot of ideas there as well.
If somebody wants, a church wants to have a funeral or something like that, and they'd like to use Van Meter Hall during Monday through Friday, they can use Van Meter Hall, and it is in such a way that the school can still have their classrooms and function without needing to go into Van Meter Hall at all. So you can have church functions in Van Meter Hall during Monday through Friday when needed. So it flips both ways.
Yeah, right now, half of Van Meter Hall is used Monday through Friday as children's classrooms and preschool offices. Like, there's no way to partition our building for dual use during the week, and this really allows more of that functionality, in addition to having that really enticing fellowship area on a Sunday morning. All right, I was asked, are there any wish list items for the sanctuary? Kelly, do you want to take this? Are there any wish list items for the sanctuary?
We definitely have had some suggestions and some ideas of enhancing the sanctuary. We're still kind of thinking on those, certainly technology and some changes in that way, but we are thinking of some aesthetic changes. It won't be such that it's going to be a huge, dramatic number that we think we need to add on top of this 1.8, but yes, that's in the mix. We're still kind of mulling on those ideas and how to kind of execute them.
Yeah, and there are some wish list items for the sanctuary that are also built into other parts of the budget, right? Like some of the technology upgrades that we have made in the last few years have come from other places in the budget, not a special fundraising. Is anybody else holding a question card? Okay, you can have a blank card. Right. Yes. Yeah, that's in our brain. That's in our brain for sure. All right, folks. Well, if you think of questions on your drive home or as you're chatting with your loved ones, please email me or Kelly or Ted or Beth, and she'll get it to us. Or give us a call or whatever, or hand me a note on the way out. But we want to collect any other questions that you have, and we'll make sure to clearly answer those in the November newsletter. Ted, why don't you go to the back of the room so when they exit, you can catch them. Ted has the self-addressed stand forms for you. And again, I just want to thank you for taking the time to hear about this whole project, really hear us out. And I want to thank all of you who have already been part of this. Some of the folks in this room are some of those lead donors that have already helped us to get to where we are. What an exciting time for us to be able to say, we have a vision for where God is taking us. It's a big vision, $1.85 million. Friends, we're already 1.55 there. This is happening. I would love for you to jump on board and help this to really become fully realized and a full reality here at Hunt's Church. By the end of 2027, we're going to have a whole brand new campus. Thank you for your time today, and we'll hang out for a little while longer if you want to talk about anything else. Have a good afternoon.